Hey there, class. All right, today in this video, we're going to be showing you how to safely and effectively use the miter saw. Now, in tech theater, we use the miter saw a lot to make crosscuts when we're cutting boards for, building platforms or building, flats. Anything that we build on the stage as far as the set goes, we need to make a lot of crosscuts. And that's what the miter saw is used for. It's also used to make angled cuts anytime we need to make any miters, which is why it's called a miter saw. So anytime we need to make an angle cut, I'll show you how to do that as well. If you ever need to remember the safety rules and make sure that you're following them correctly, they're always posted right here next to the miter saw. We have two miter saws actually, and they're posted over there as well with the other one. But these are pretty similar, so there's not really a lot of difference there. So first safety rule with any of these machines, any of the power tools, is to make sure that you have safety glasses, okay? So I got my safety glasses on, I'm ready to make a cross cut. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to get the piece that I'm gonna cut. I'm gonna check my board here, and I'm gonna make sure it doesn't have any staples or screws in the area that I want to cut, okay? A lot of these boards, we reuse a lot of stuff. Sometimes, if we have a nice long board, we can reuse. And so it may have something in it. Something may have gotten missed. So we're going to make sure that we don't have any metal in there because we don't want the saw to hit any of that metal stuff. It'll be sparks and very scary and all that kind of stuff. So we don't want to do that. So I'm good. I got a little staples up here, but that's okay because I'm going to be cutting down here. And where I check down here, I don't see anything that will cause any trouble. So before I make a cross cut, I'm going to make sure that my table here is clear. I don't have any sawdust or chunks of wood up against this fence. Because as I put my board in place, I want to make sure that it's flat on the table, it's not sitting up on anything, so it's not angled, and it's flat up against this fence, because that way I'll get the straightest 90 cut that I want. Or even the angled cut, I'll get it as straight as possible because it's flat up against this fence. And if there's anything behind there, you'll have a little space, and then you'll be off a bit, okay? So I'm gonna make sure that's good. Next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my measurement. Okay, I'm going to mark where I want to cut it. So I'm going to cut this to 2 feet, make a little mark right here with my pencil. Okay, then the better you get with this, you can just use that mark. But if you want to make sure that your line is right on, you can use a square here. You can line this up just like that. And then that way you've got a straight line, 90 going all the way across. Okay, we're going to put that there. Make sure this is flat up against the fence. Then I'm going to line it up. So I'm going to take my arm here, I'm going to bring it down, and I'm not going to put it right on my line, I'm going to put it on the correct side of my line. When we're making a cut, we have the piece that we want to keep, right? And then we have what we call the trash side. So I want to make sure that my blade is on that side that is the trash side, because the blade is 1/8 of an inch thick, and we don't want to cut that 1/8 of an inch off of our measurement. So I want to make sure this is on the trash side. So I'm going to line it up. I'm good to go. Just like that. I'm ready. Okay. So now I'm going to make my cut. So I'm going to make sure that I'm holding this down and up against the fence so that it doesn't move during the process at all. Because if it moves while it's being cut, it could jump. It could move around. And we could have some serious problems safety-wise. So we want to make sure that it's secure. So I'm going to hold this down. I want to also talk about hand placement. I want to make sure that my hand is not inside this ring right here. I call this the ring of pain. You don't want your hand in there. So I'm going to make sure that my fingers and my thumb are outside of that ring, but I'm holding this down up against the table and up against the fence. Okay, so into that little corner. So my other hand, I'm going to reach up here to the arm. I'm going to pull the trigger, which will start the blade. I'm going to pull it all the way down, and I'm going to make sure that my blade is spinning at full speed before I make contact with the wood. So if it's not going full speed, it's not going to make as clean of a cut, and it may actually get caught on your board, and you don't want that either. So I'm going to pull my trigger, make sure it's at full speed. Then I'm going to slowly cut down through the wood, all the way down. I'm going to let go of my trigger and wait for the blade to stop spinning completely. then I'm going to lift my blade back up. That way I don't have an exposed blade spinning in the air as I'm going back up, okay? Because as you move this down, this safety cover right here goes up as you go down. So we don't want the exposed blade spinning in the air, okay? So again, that's down, then wait for it to stop spinning, and then go back up, okay? So I'm ready to make a cut. Let's go ahead and do that. Now that it stops spinning, I'm gonna go ahead and raise it up. Okay, so I've got my piece right here. Perfect. One other thing I want to talk about with hand placement is cutting smaller pieces. So if I'm going to cut a piece that's just slightly smaller than this, I don't want to cut it off of this piece. I know that you might think that's a great idea because, oh, I'm conserving wood. But what'll happen is if I need to cut a small piece, then to hold this board in place, I've got to put my hand really close to the blade, and I don't want to do that. So it's better to cut smaller pieces first out of your big pieces, then do those bigger pieces down the line, okay? All right, the next thing I want to do, I'll talk about how to make an angled cut, okay? So if I want to make an angled cut, I just have to adjust it right here. So I'm going to turn the knob to unlock it, okay? And then there's a little lever down here, you pull it up, and I'm able to turn the blade whichever angle that I want it to go. So I'm just going to do a basic 45 cut, and a lot of these standard angled miter cuts, there's a little notch here that you can see that it will lock into place. So as I'm moving it over, I can hear it click into place, and I know that it's right on the 45. So that's kind of handy. If you need to cut something really specific, say I need to cut 44, right? I need to make sure that it's on the 44 line. I can look at the gauge and make sure that I know it's right there. Then it's not going to click into place, so I'm going to have to really tighten this up to make sure that it doesn't move, and it's going to cut me an exact 44-degree angle, okay? Miter saws can also turn, the blade can go this way, so it can cut like that. We don't do that very often, only maybe when we're putting trim up on something, and the other saw is a little bit better at that than this one. But we do cut these kind of angles at a time. Alternatively, you can turn the board on its side, and that will help cut that angle as well. It just depends on the size of your piece and other factors. So I'm going to cut a 45-degree angle. I'm going to lock it into place, make sure it doesn't move. I'm going to make a mark here, and I can use my square and I can turn it this way, and then that will be an exact 45 if I do that. Okay. So let's say I've measured out here. I'm going to make my mark just like this. Okay, same concept goes here. I'm going to make sure that I put my blade on the trash side of my line. I'm going to line it up. I'm going to hold this in place. I'm going to make sure it's flat against the table and it's flat up against the fence. Okay, then I'm going to make my cut the exact same way. Okay, even though it's at an angle, it's a little different, but it's the exact same concept. So let's make this cut. There we go. We've made ourselves an angled cut. Okay. The last thing I want to talk about is again coming back to hand placement. So before that, let's go back to 0. Make sure that's set at 0. That way, that's the most standard way we cut something. So we're going to make sure it's at 0. And when you come up to the saw, it's always a good idea to check: is it on 0? Okay, good. It's not someone didn't leave it at 2 or 3 or something like that. It's at 0. So the other thing with hand placement is, what if you're left-handed? Okay, this machine, as we can see, is made for right-handed people. That's just the world we live in, unfortunately. But what if I'm left-handed? What if I want to pull this down with my left hand? Well, that's fine, you can do that, but there's a certain way to do it that's safer. I never want to cross my arms like this. I always want to have my arms open, either this way or this way when I'm holding my board down. So if I'm holding this with my left hand, my right hand's going to be over here. If I'm holding this with my right hand, I'm not going to cross it like this, because when I pull this blade down, my arm is very close to that blade, and that is very unsafe. Even if you have pulled your arm over here, it's not a safe way to pull this down, and you don't have a lot of control either. So the thing to do is to move yourself to the other side of the blade, right? So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to hold this side with my right hand. I have to kind of look at this differently and line it up a little differently, but I'm going to hold this side with my right hand, then use my left hand here. And as you can see, if I'm standing like that, my arms are not crossed, my arms are open like that. So it's the same concept. You can make a cut just like that and make sure you don't cross your arms. Okay, so now you know how to effectively and safely use a miter saw to make crosscuts, and this thing is really handy for building all the sets we do. So see you in the next one.